Hey everybody, it's Miss Fulmer. I am here to give you some notes for this week's pre-cal lesson. Super weird to be having to do this online. Wasn't expecting to have to teach online, just as I'm sure you weren't expecting to do school online. But we're gonna make the best of it. It's gonna be fine. I hope all of you are doing well. I miss you very much. And hopefully all this will pass soon so that I can see your faces again. But until then, looks like this is how we're going to be doing lessons for a little while, so we're just going to get started. So we left off basically just finishing up the unit circle, and now we're going to go into inverse functions, which is something that you should have learned a little bit in Algebra 2. If you didn't, that's okay. We're going to kind of start from the beginning anyway, but yeah, inverse functions, here we go. I would suggest that you get some notebook paper out and a pencil and take notes along with me, just like we would if we were in class. You don't have to do that, obviously, but it's really going to stick in your brain more if you do that, and then you'll have those notes ready for when you have some practice problems to turn in. Also, don't make fun of my handwriting. I'm writing on an iPad with a stylus, so it's not going to be perfect. And I have to write with my elbow up off of the iPad or else it'll go crazy. So it's a little awkward. Here we go, inverse functions. Okay. The functions f and g are inverse functions if and only if, I'm going to do a shorthand there, IFF, that stands for if and only if, f of g of x, composition of functions there, equals x, and g of f of x equals x. Okay, so both those things have to be true in order for f and g to be inverse functions. So we're going to do an example. Example 1. And we're going to look at f of x equals x plus 2, and g of x equals x minus 2. So we want to know if these two functions are inverse functions. So we have to see if f of g of x equals x and g of f of x equals x. So the first thing we have to check is f of g of x. Okay, so then I'm just going to replace this g of x with what g of x is actually equal to. So f of, and then instead of g of x, I'm going to write the function g of x, which is x minus 2. Okay, this is still function notation, f of x minus 2. All that means is we're going to look at the function f of x, and instead of x, we're going to plug in x minus 2. So instead of x plus 2, it's x minus 2 plus 2. Okay, the minus 2, the plus 2 cancel out, and we're left with x. So f of g of x does in fact equal x. Now we have to check g of f of x. Okay, so replace f of x with what f of x is actually equal to, which is x plus 2. And then plug that in for x in our function g. So g of x is x minus 2. So plugging in x plus 2, we get x plus 2 minus 2. So then again, 2 minus 2, that cancels, and we're left with x. So because both of those things are true, we can say f of x and g of x are inverse functions. Okay, so that's example 1. So when you're asked if two functions are inverses of each other, these are the two things that you have to check: the composition of functions f of g and g of f, and make sure that both of those things will simplify to be just x. If it doesn't, if either one of them did not equal x, then f and g would not be inverse functions. Okay, let's look at example 2. How do I make a new page on this? Do I have to erase the whole thing every time? I guess. Cool. No way. I have to do this every time I want a new page. All right, well. Okay, now we're going to look at the steps to find the inverse of any old function. I don't like that. Okay, first step is you're going to be given a function, usually in function notation, f of x, g of x, f of t, whatever the function notation is, you're going to replace that notation. So replace function notation with y. So we want our function to be y equals, not f of x equals. After you've done that, you are going to exchange the x and y. So anywhere there's an x in the statement, you're going to write y, and anywhere there's a y, you're going to write x. Okay, then you're going to solve that new equation for y. When you do that, that's going to give you y equals the inverse function. So you're basically done at that point. The last step is just to change back. So you're going to change y back to function notation, but this time it's going to be inverse function notation. Okay, an inverse function notation is f inverse of x, where you put a little -1 as a superscript, or it looks like it's an exponent on f, but it's really just inverse function notation. So if it's g of x, then your inverse would be g inverse of x with that little -1 up there. Okay, let's look at an example. So this would be example 2. And we're going to find the inverse of a couple different functions. So this will be part A, where f of x equals the, oh, that doesn't look like a 3, the cube root of x minus 5. Okay, so following these steps, the first step is to change function notation, which would be f of x. Change that to y. So y equals the cube root of x minus 5. Then switch the x and the y. So instead of y here, we're going to write x. And instead of x, we write y. Okay, the third step is to solve this equation for y. So the first thing we need to do, since it's the cube root of y minus 5. To get rid of that, we want to cube both sides, or raise both sides to the third power. On the left, that's going to give us x cubed. And on the right, the cube root and the cubed cancel, and we're just left with y minus 5. Okay, add 5 to both sides to get y by itself. So we get x cubed plus 5 equals y. Okay, so y equals x cubed plus 3 is our inverse. Now we just need to change back to inverse notation. So instead of f of x, this is f inverse of x equals x cubed plus 5. That's our answer. All right, let's look at another one. I'm just going to erase this part. Okay, so this is part B of example 2. We have g of x equals x minus 4 over x plus 2. That 4 kind of looks like a y. There we go. All right, so first step, change function notation. So change g of x to y. Second step, change the x and the y. So instead of y, we write x, and instead of x, we write y. All right, now we need to solve for y. So to get rid of this fraction on the right side, we need to multiply both sides by the denominator. So multiply both sides by y plus 2. On the left side, we're just going to distribute the distribute the x to multiply. So that would be xy plus 2x. On the right side, the y plus 2's cancel, and we're left with y minus 4. Okay, this next step, we want to get all of the terms that have y in it on one side and everything else on the other side. So the first thing I want to do is move this y to the left side. So I'm going to subtract y from both sides in order to do that. So on the left side, we have xy plus 2x minus y. Notice we can't subtract y from the xy because x and y are being multiplied there. If they were being added, then we could cancel out the y's, but we can't do that in this case. On the right side, we're left with negative 4. Okay, so I've got all the terms with y in it on one side, but I need to get rid of this 2x. Since it doesn't have a y in it, it needs to move to the other side. So subtract 2x from both sides to do that. So we're left with xy minus y equals negative 4 minus 2x. Okay, so on the left side, since everything has a y in it, both of those terms have y in it, we can factor out a y, and we're left with x minus 1. Okay, then to get y by itself, we're going to divide both sides by x minus 1. So that the x minus 1's will cancel, and we'll be left with y equals this fraction, negative 4 minus 2x over x minus 1. Okay, so we've got y by itself. Now we're to our last step, which is to change back to function notation. So since this is our inverse of g of x, this would be g inverse of x equals -4 minus 2x over x minus 1. That's our answer. Okay, that's it. That's all the notes. You all are going to have 4 practice problems, I think. There's a document in Google Classroom that you can click on and see the problems. What I want you to do is work through those problems on your own paper. And then when you're finished, you'll submit a photo of your assignment, your finished assignment. You'll submit a photo on Google Classroom. But you'll have until basically next Sunday night to do that. So one assignment, I know that you guys are going to be bombarded with schoolwork this week. So one assignment this week, if it goes well and we can start doing more, then I'll do that. But just to start off, we're going to do one assignment, 4 practice problems. Send me your answers when you're finished. Show your work, please. And yeah, we'll go from there. If you have any questions as you're working, please email me. I'm here. I got plenty of time to help you with whatever you need. Also, reach out to your friends that are in your class and make sure that they've joined the Google Classroom, because they're not going to be getting these assignments if they haven't. And I know a lot still haven't done that. So reach out to your friends, call them, text them, make sure that they are keeping up with their schoolwork so that they don't get overwhelmed with makeup work on down the line. All right, that's all I've got for you. Stay safe. I'll see you guys with a new video next Monday. Bye.